New Jersey. The section of the trail to Longhouse Road was very beautiful. However, after we crossed the road, the trail became very swampy, with several ATV and dirt bike trails that crossed the AT. It was getting late. Around 5 o'clock, when we reached Wawayanda State Park, the water for the backpacking campsites was at the visitor center, so we had to walk an extra 2 miles to get water at the restrooms. We set up our tent behind Wawayanda Shelter with about 3 thru-hikers who were staying in the shelter. It was a nice site in the pines. However, it was stressful to set up as night was approaching fast. I had forgot to pack the forks and spoons, and to top this night off, the dehydrated tofu had spoiled, so we ended up eating just a noodle dinner. I had a hard time sleeping after we had cleaned up and got into the tent. I had my MP3 player and was listening to white sounds to help me sleep. It helps to drown out Dave's snoring. I had turned it off during the night to pee in my small bucket and had heard a huffing sound outside close to the tent. I froze and was listening intensely. I heard 3 more huffing sounds. I began to panic immediately. New Jersey is known to have a large bear population, and this is not where I would like to see a bear right now. Our food bag was hung up in a tree a distance from the tent and not in the metal food box provided by the park. Big mistake. I had resolved to stay awake and to keep my ear open for the sound of a bear. I sat here listening for noises, but the only sound that I had heard was an owl in the distance and the sounds of Dave's snoring. I hope his snoring will scare off any bears. I laid back down in my sleeping bag and put my MP3 back on. Somehow, I had drifted off back to sleep. August 5th, Wawayanda Shelter, south to Route 94. We woke up to a cold morning with no humidity for the month of August. This had never happened before. The temperature was only 50 degrees. Dave had diarrhea and ran to the privy at 6 o'clock. When he got back, he started a small fire to warm us up while we were eating our breakfast. We had not gone to the shelter yesterday when we arrived here, so we did not see the sign on the shelter that said, "No fires allowed." Yesterday, we had found the remains of a fire that someone else had a fire at one of the tent sites, so we did not know that it was not allowed here. Later, we met the trail maintainer, and he had come over to us at our campsite, and he talked to us about how weekend and section hikers do not follow the rules and start illegal campfires. Our fire was already out at the time, and Dave had cleaned up the area before we had even seen the sign. He has always believed in leaving the woods the way we find it. Leave no trace. The trail maintainer must had smelled smoke when he arrived here and had thought that we had a fire going here, which of course we did. Our plan today was to hike to Route 94 and then hike back to this campsite where we will leave our tent set up. We had took only Dave's backpack with just the water bottles and our lunch with us. We were making good time on the trail with no heavy backpacks on our back. The day was sunny and had warmed up. The water source was back at the visitor center. We found a small stream and filtered our water here. We reached a rocky cliff with many people who had climbed up the cliff to see this great view of the farm fields below us. The trail went down the cliff, and it was an extremely difficult descent on this rock slide with all the large and small rocks. We made it to the bottom, and we were wiped out from the descent. We could not imagine having to go back up it to get to our campsite. We reached Route 94 and went over to Heaven Hill Farm to get food for tonight. Dave had an ideal, and he said, "Why don't we call for a taxi to take us back to our truck and not climb back up that rock slide?" We went back into the store, and the woman at the counter had called for a taxi for us and told us that it would cost $20 to bring us back to our truck. We sat at a table on the porch and had a bag of chips with some salsa as we waited for our ride. This was a great place for hikers to stop at and get food and sit here and relax for a while before continuing their hike on the trail. We were happy because we would be spending the night in our camper tonight and will not have to climb up that rock slide. We are not bailing out on our hike by getting a ride back to our truck. Thru-hikers and section hikers only have to go in one direction. However, we have to do bonus miles and have to go back in the other direction to complete just one section of the trail. We got back to our truck and drove over to Wawayanda State Park to pick up the tent and my backpack. We drove back to Route 94 and camped in the AT parking lot where we had climbed down the rock slide. We had a great sunset over the cow field across the road, and I loved the farm around here. It was heaven being inside the camper tonight, after only one night in the tent. I did miss the sound of the owl, but not the huffing sound near our tent. Now all we hear is traffic noise, as Route 94 was busy all night long. August 6th, Route 94 south to Route 565. We woke up to a cold morning as the sun shined down on the field. We started our hike over a cow stile and onto the farm field. There were wild flowers in the field, with a view of Pinwheel Vista that we had climbed down yesterday. We reached the boardwalks that had been fixed since the last time that we were here in October 2011, when we found the boardwalks and a footbridge over a stream and a wet area were all destroyed by Hurricane Irene. Now there were two new beautiful bridges over the stream. Later in the day, lots of people will be walking this area. However, we got out here early, at 6 o'clock, so we had the whole trail to ourselves. We crossed Route 94 and started our climb up to Pochuck Mountain. As we descended the mountain, we heard noises in the woods. Dave said that it sounded like native Indian drums and chanting. It was very faint as it was coming from a long distance away. I had thought that it might be a local tribe having a ceremony. We kept following the trail, and the noise was becoming louder, and the sound was getting clearer. We saw a path off the trail and followed it toward the sound, and was disappointed when we came out to a high school with a marching band practicing on a field. We passed some northbound thru-hikers, and we could tell that they were thru-hikers because one of the hikers smelled really bad. Later, we had found some human poop in the middle of the trail. No toilet paper, it was very wet, and we believed that the stinky hiker must have had diarrhea. We reached Route 565 and crossed the street where we had come out in October. We finished New Jersey, another state on the AT done.